Good evening, everybody. I'm Jack Megan. I'm Director of the Office for the Arts, and I'm so relieved. I feel the one part of the evening that I could really mess up was forgetting to hit the space bar to stop the music, but I nailed it. Anyway, welcome on behalf of the Department of Music at Harvard and the Office for the Arts at Harvard to tonight's celebration of the Luise Vosgerchian Teaching Award. And you'll hear a lot more about Luise later on this evening, but this is a really significant award. And we're thrilled tonight to honor the drummer, composer, arranger, teacher, activist, great inspiration, Terri Lyne Carrington, and to honor her tonight. Just to give you a quick overview of the evening, it's divided into 4 parts. We'll begin with reflections from Vijay Iyer. Professor Iyer, and I want to make sure I say Professor Iyer's title correctly. I always just call him Vijay. But the Franklin D. and Florence Rosenblatt Professor of the Arts in the Department of Music and African American Studies. Following Vijay's welcome, we'll be joined by Somi, who is here in our graduate school, candidate for a PhD in creative practice and critical inquiry in Harvard's Department of Music, and herself an incredible artist, who will engage Terri Lyne in a conversation. And along the way, we'll have questions from 2 undergraduates, Toussaint Miller and Dylan Goodman. The third part is, of course, music. There will be music from students at the Berklee Institute for Jazz and Gender Justice, and then we will conclude with the presentation of the award itself. So welcome to everyone here in Paine Hall. Welcome to everyone who's viewing this online. We're glad you can join us in this way. And would you please give a warm welcome to Professor Vijay Iyer.
Hey, everybody. Oh, somebody's playing. How are you? Feeling good? Well, I wanted to give the first word this evening to one of our dear friends, a mutual friend of Terry's and mine and Somi's and many others in the room and here at Harvard. Her name is Carrie Mae Weems.
Terry, from my hiding place, I've been watching you for years. I remember when you were born. I remember that your father was hoping for a son who would carry on the tradition, but was then surprised to learn that by the age of 8 or 9, you could play the drums to beat the band, carrying the tradition far beyond the limits of imagination. You walked out onto history's stage, unarmed and unprotected. I can't imagine that you were prepared for what you would face. A lifetime of being singular, of being one of the only ones, one of the few. This took courage, but somehow you rose to the task. And now we all know something about the possible. This is not a documentary, but rather an investigation and observation. You were young, very young, when you walked out onto history stage. following in the footsteps of your father and your grandfather. You entered the ring, the battle of men, yet you were a child, a girl, a woman. What this meant, what this means, is a story that is cruel enough to curdle the blood. Terri, I remember a time before time, and I remember the tick, 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 tick of the clock. I remember a time when you walked out onto history's stage, unarmed and unprotected. But you walked out without fear and with courage. How? Why? Where does that come from? On the day you were born, I saw a flock of birds migrating through air and space and time. Blackbirds. You were a time before time, and you became a keeper of time, one of the first, but not the last. The beginning, but not the end. You set something in motion, and now the world follows your beat, your tone, your pulse, your rhythm, your meaning. You were zooming long before Zoom, taking us into a world of the possible, a world of meaning, a landscape of meaning that included the likes of you and others that were to follow. How? How did you do this, Terri? I remember seeing you as a young girl, and then later as a woman, banging on the drums, keeping time, and allowing others to follow suit, to pace themselves in your measure. It was a gift, a special gift that occurs only once in a lifetime. For the moment, there is no other you.
Well, let's see. So that was the wonderful Carrie Mae Weems. Yeah, I'm not really saying anything yet. I'm just vamping. Bear with me. All right. So that was Carrie Mae Weems, speaking of our dear colleague and friend and hero, Boston's own Terri Lyne Carrington, from a very special personal vantage, familial, I think it could be said. When I say Boston's own, this is what I mean. These are three of the greatest drummers of all time. You know, often when we talk about the story of jazz, we start with New Orleans, but then what does it mean to say that Roy Haynes and Tony Williams and Terri Lyne Carrington are all from Boston? It actually shifts the center of things in a really important way. And especially to situate Terri in this very special lineage of great, truly great drummers, initiators of the language of drumming. I'll never forget the first time I heard Terri Lyne Carrington live. It was also the day I first met Herbie Hancock in Paris in the late 1990s at La Villette Jazz Festival. I was electrified by the wide spectrum in her sound and her feel. The deep, earthy kicks, the metallic splashes, the athletic drive, the playful dance, the swagger, the lilt. She was somehow equal parts Art Blakey and Roy Haynes, Tony Williams and Jack DeJohnette, part boxer, part dancer, all drive and all finesse, bound together with grace and flair, lifting our spirits, making the music soar and roar. When they played Eye of the Hurricane, Terri Lyne Carrington was the hurricane of the eye. The fact that Hancock was out touring the world with this phenomenal woman drummer was not lost on anyone, the significance of that fact. She was also such an obvious boon to the music that her status in the group was beyond question. This was state-of-the-art music making, as real as it gets. I wanted to just give you your ear a little splash of that sound. If this is working, let's see, do I just... That's a very special quartet performance of Herbie Hancock, Scott Colley, Gary Thomas, and Terri Lyne Carrington 20-ish years ago. In this tradition, this century or so of black sonic mattering, let's call it, it's the drummers who are the complete musicians, possessing the ultimate wisdom, the kind of knowledge that can't be written down and the kind that can. As the polyrhythmic master Elvin Jones declared, the drummer is the conductor of the band. What this means is that the best drummers are summoners, harnessing the potential of the ensemble, the gathering, the multitude, igniting and channeling the potential into coherent collective action. And Terri Lyne Carrington has done exactly that, on and off the bandstand, in public for close to 4 decades. Since appearing on the scene as an upstart drummer in the early 1980s, she had a stint on television, a meteoric decade and a half in the continual company of Wayne Shorter and Herbie Hancock, a flood of studio recordings, shelves full of awards, and a host of projects under her name, including 3 entire albums dedicated to women composer-performers, and a job at Berklee College, where she has not just mentored generations of students, but founded and directs the Institute for Jazz and Gender Justice. That whole very abbreviated trajectory now brings us to the exalted realm that our dear Terri finds herself in today. A giant presence in modern music, an admired and much imitated drummer, a prolific composer, a celebrated band leader, a Grammy-winning producer, a vastly influential educator, instigator, community organizer, change agent, activist, advocate for gender and racial justice, a leader, a healer, and a friend to all. Terri represents the best of us. And when I was trying to figure out how to approach these remarks today, I had to ask myself, well, what would Terri do? And what she would do is include the voices of as many people as she can muster to support the mission. So that's what we're going to do. Just wanted to go through what you will hear about the Vosgerchian, is that how you say it, award guidelines, requiring that the recipient embody the following qualities: selfless commitment, artistic conscience, a constant renewal of approach to subject matter, ability to motivate in a positive and creative way, a sincere interest in the development of the whole person, and the ability to present musical knowledge in a way that is applicable to other disciplines. A couple of weeks ago, I was on tour with my group. This will sound like a flex, but it really isn't, because at the end, it just ends up being more about her. We had just landed in Boston Airport when I received the surprising news that a recording I was a part of, titled Love in Exile, was nominated for 2 Grammys, including one in a brand new category, new this year, Best Alternative Jazz Album. I said while waiting for a ride at Logan that I didn't know what to expect with this new category. I was just glad to be a part of it. And my colleague, the bassist and composer Linda Mahon O, simply replied, "That's Terri." It turned out that she had been active behind the scenes, instigating new structural shifts in the Recording Academy to enable a category like this one. Linda went on to elaborate. Here's the first of now what will be a long series of our friends and colleagues taking solos. Linda said, "Terri makes things happen. If she sees something needs to be done, she goes and does it. If she sees something needs to be fixed, she goes and fixes it. Terri sincerely cares about every project she is a part of and invests her whole self into improving our community. She does this with the courage to speak up when things need improvement, but also with empathy and open-mindedness." Similarly, our dear friend, the great drummer Marcus Gilmore, says, "Terri is always serving the music first and foremost, no matter the format. At this point, I've listened to her for the greater portion of my life in many different contexts, on record and live in person. Her playing is always personal, purposeful, and always in service of lifting the music." My dear friend and colleague Tyshawn Sorey describes Terri's impeccable sense of form, seeing the bigger picture of any song, and she is constantly inventive over the entire course of a song or a set. She doesn't repeat herself. Her playing is never one thing, but it's many things, clear, articulate, elegant, always in motion, and fully engaged. And her touch on the instrument is remarkable, where no matter the dynamic level, she always gets a full sound. It takes an insane amount of control to do that while making the music feel and heal good. She's one of my favorites and someone who I looked up to since way back in the day. Love her and her music to pieces. That's from Tyshawn. One of our dear students who is hopefully tuning in from London right now, Devin Gates, soon to graduate. She talked about this artistic conscience in this particular way. I'll read people writing about jazz and gender studies in particular, saying, "We need to be listening with big ears. We need new paradigms. We need to decolonize." And then you just look over to Terri, and she's over there doing it. Maybe not writing papers about it, but actively giving people more opportunities and making really amazing art and organizing about it. A constant renewal of approach to subject matter, a commitment to change, evolution, and self-transformation, and what I would call the metamorphic tradition of this music. Our dear student Veronica Leahy says, something that's just so exciting is that she has become such an open-minded idea of what I think jazz means, what it is, what it's becoming, what it could be. You know, for somebody who has played with so many straight-ahead giants or who's deeply rooted in tradition, she's constantly thinking about how to move things forward. Devin Gates says, there's so much humility in what she does. She's literally trying to give everyone a shot at doing this, and she has so much compassion for the ways that her perspective has evolved in recent years on this. That's really cool to see from an elder who could say that her word is law, and we would take her word for it if we wanted to. I mean, why wouldn't we? And she chooses not to do that. She chooses to be malleable and open. And I think it's a lesson to all of us just to watch someone of her stature and her age and her position in our ecosystem, you know, just be so open to change. Veronica again. I was talking to her, she's like, yeah, in my free time I call up men in the industry just to kind of chat and challenge them. I don't know anyone else who would do that, but she has no free time. You wouldn't do that unless you care. Because that is not for show. That is not something that she's telegraphing to the world just to get personal gain. It's because she cares. She doesn't have to do any of this. She just cares so much about creating a better world for generations to come. Our dear colleague Tia Fuller told me today, my second to last album, Angelic Warrior, was a dedication to Terri. She houses that ultimate balance of angel, the graceful, the peaceful, the meditative, the zen, and then she's able to fire off and really tap into her warrior side. I think a large part of how I move, this is Tia speaking, as the leader with my band is from watching Terri, you know, and seeing how impeccable with detail she is as a leader, but also as a player. It's definitely all one. She's a major influence. I'm thankful that she's been in my life because she's really helped to shape who I am musically over the last decade. A sincere interest in the development of the whole purpose. Here's Devin again. She is so clearly personally invested in so many of her students. I don't even know how she does it because she's doing everything all the time, but I think it's amazing to see her commitment to mentorship really just exceed any of my expectations or any of my peers' expectations who thought we'd just be signing up for a class once a week. She's very real. She'll give it to you straight, which is great. And some people might think that that could be harsh, but it's always out of love. And she's very caring and very intentional with her words. She doesn't have breath to waste. Veronica, again. She's carrying a very powerful torch. She's always imparting so much wisdom on us, even on the bandstand. She treats me as a collaborator, but then she's also such a mentor. It's a nice balance because it's not a condescending relationship. It's always just an open, gracious, and kind relationship that she has with her students. But she always takes those moments to mentor us or give us a piece of advice too. The ability to present musical knowledge in a way that is applicable to other disciplines. Veronica continues. It's just amazing to look at what she's done, obviously through her playing, through her writing, through her creating the Institute. She's done museum exhibits and films. She's just taking every avenue that she possibly can take advantage of, all the resources that she can to mobilize and to make sure that these things are seen and heard and talked about. It's amazing. Devin, again, who is, by the way, an anthropology concentrator, here. Terri is really in conversation with a lot of the material that I've been reading in my anthropology classes. It's really practice in conversation with theory. And she's also theorizing by doing in a way that people may then write really cool papers about someday. Just a quick word, a few words about the Institute for Jazz and Gender Justice. Really just the words of others to signal the importance that it holds in our field and in the world. Devin, once again. I think for a lot of the other students that I've met, my friends that I've made there, and for myself, the Institute for Jazz and Gender Justice, sorry, it should be IJGJ, the Institute for Jazz and Gender Justice is one of the reasons why we still play. It's been really life-giving. Tia told me she's the ultimate visionary, ultimate. We see that reflected throughout everything she does. She's functioning in first person, but she is actualizing in third person. She's able to do that simultaneously. One of the only people that I've been able to see do that effectively. I'll conclude with a text message I got today from our dear hero, Angela Davis. There are some people whose power and greatness reside in their immense contributions to the field of their choice. But then there are others who not only make enormous and lasting contributions, but also fundamentally transform their field. Terri Lyne Carrington is among the latter. Because of her and others like her, jazz looks different, sounds different, and has a range of new possible futures. For countless decades, the rubric women and jazz has been evoked as if two entirely different subjects needed to be forcibly brought together. Thanks to Terri Lyne, we know that it is not enough to talk about women in jazz, rather how jazz itself is developing new musical potentialities as a result of potent demands for gender justice. Thank you, Angela. And with that, I'd like to just give a warm Harvard welcome to one of my all-time favorites. I think I speak for many in the room when I say I want to be like you when I grow up. Please welcome the great Terri Lyne Carrington. Come on up. Have a seat. Joining Terri in conversation is another one of my all-time favorites. You can come on up. Here, I'm just going to give you a hug while I can.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. I really appreciate it.
You can, if you want to have a seat.
Which
Why
one,
not?
anyway?
Either. You know, a few years ago, we were going through our PhD applications, and there was someone in there who we've all known for a long time and believed in and stood in awe of her trajectory as an artist. And it became clear that to open this door to an artist like her would really change the game. So we're very fortunate to have Somi Kakoma as one of our PhD students here, but she's much more than that. Just gonna read out a bit about her. Vocalist, composer, and playwright. Somi Kakoma was raised between Illinois and Zambia and is the daughter of immigrants from Uganda and Rwanda. Known in the jazz world simply as Somi, The New York Times described her as a virtuosic performer in full command of her instrument and powers. In 2022, Somi released her fifth studio album, Zenzile, the reimagination of Miriam Makeba, an all-star tribute album honoring the great South African artist and activist in commemoration of what would have been the late singer's 90th birthday. The album won an inaugural Jazz Music Award for Best Vocal Performance. As a companion project to the album, Somi also wrote and starred in the critically acclaimed original musical about Makeba called Dreaming Zenzile that toured nationally and off-Broadway last year. Prior to the Zenzile album, Somi released an unplanned live album called Holy Room, featuring the Frankfurt Radio Big Band at the height of the 2020 global lockdown. The album ultimately earned her a 2021 Grammy nomination for Best Jazz Vocal Album, making her the first African woman ever nominated in any of the Grammy Jazz categories. The album also won an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Jazz Vocal Album. Her previous studio album, Petite Afrique, which also won an NAACP Image Award, tells a story of the vibrant African immigrant community in the midst of a rapidly gentrifying Harlem in New York City, and was the highly anticipated follow-up to Somi's major label debut, the Lagos Music Salon. This fall, she debuted on Broadway in the title role of a new play called Jaja's African Hair Braiding by Jocelyn Bio. Closely mentored by the legendary trumpet player Hugh Masekela, Somi has carved out her own path as an artist, scholar, and activist. A recipient of the 2023 Doris Duke Artist Award, Somi is also a Soros Equality Fellow, a United States Artist Fellow, a TED Senior Fellow, a Sundance Theater Fellow, and a former artist in residence at Park Avenue Armory. Somi holds undergraduate degrees in cultural anthropology and African studies from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, a master's degree in performance studies from the Tisch School of the Arts at NYU, and is, of course, currently working on her PhD at Harvard in our program in creative practice and critical inquiry. In her heart of hearts, she writes, she is an East African Midwestern girl who loves family, poetry, and freedom. And we're so glad to have you around today to join Terri in conversation. Please welcome the great Somi.
Hey, we can't be too quiet. Hi, Terri Lyne.
Hey, Somi.
Vijay, thank you for that lovely and warm welcome. Selfless commitment. Selfless commitment. I love that because, firstly, I just want to start by saying what an honor it is. I know, we've had the chance of, I've had the opportunity of collaborating with you in various formats and projects over the years, and I'm just so grateful. You are a mentor, a teacher, a friend to me, and this idea of selfless commitment could not be, you represent that in such a beautiful way in all that you do. Even when he mentioned the Jazz Music Award, she's actually the founder of that award. So that's just one more thing where she's always lifting up so many other people. So I'm so grateful to have the chance to lift you up and to honor you today. When we think of Terri Lyne Carrington, or TLC, as I often like to call you and others. Many of us think of you as drummer, composer, band leader, producer first. You're being honored today as an educator. How did the role of educator come about in your life and artistic practice? And do you feel like you've been able to balance art and pedagogy in your journey?
Well, I think we are always teaching, always. So my first actual teaching gig was at USC. I was adjunct professor there before I came to Berklee. So I came to Berklee in summer of 2005. So 2 years before that, I guess from 2003, I was at USC. But I also did a lot of clinics and workshops from like 10 or 11. When I think about when I first met Jerry Allen, I was doing a clinic at Howard University where she was attending. So it was pretty funny because I was 12, and it created, this long-lasting friendship and musical relationship. We played together down there with Keeter Betts, bassist for Ella Fitzgerald. But I realized that throughout my life, there's always been that part of basically sharing what you know. And as far as, formalizing it, you work at it, because often, of course, I thought, well, I don't know how to teach or what I'm going to do. But I do know that I care. So if I can, sit with somebody long enough, I'm sure there's something, that I can share with them that could be beneficial and mutually beneficial, because I do think it's an exchange for the most part. At least those are the best kinds of teaching experiences. Sure. But as far as balancing it, I think for a minute I got burnt out a little bit and changed things. Became like an artist in residence resident at Berklee. But after about 10 years of kind of the normal teaching grind. But I realized also from touring and maintaining my touring career that there was a charge, an energy rush that I got from both being on stage and feeling that thing that we're all used to feeling. Any performer is used to feeling, and which can be addictive. But then there was also a different kind of energy or energetic fulfillment that I got one-on-one with musicians. Any musician. I mean, when we get together after the gig, you're talking about music. The best tours are when you're with the people that you can talk to, that you have some kind of synergy with in your beliefs about music, or even the people you can argue with. Those are still the best tours. So, I realized that teaching just creates that one-on-one relationship, and so that satisfaction. But they're very different, but I value both of them, I would say, equally or almost equally. And so, when I go away touring, I come back, it was always like, oh yeah, this is great. I can, because you'd be dog tired. And then you get this, you get with a student and they start doing something, you start talking about music, and then you're not tired anymore,
Beautiful. You often refer to Jack DeJohnette and Wayne Shorter as your greatest mentors. Can you talk about what it was to come up in the shadows of, not the shadows, because they were offering light, right? But to come up under, the guidance and wisdom and counsel of greats, of masters, and perhaps also speak about what values they may have passed on and how that informs your practice as an educator now.
Well, I was very fortunate just coming up in a household where musicians would also come by the house. So I was, I feel, always getting a lot of information imparted from masters. My father, he plays saxophone, and he really knew everybody in jazz. So, Papa Joe Jones would sleep over, and, Nat Adderley would come by, Clark Terry, and they would bring their whole bands, and my mom was here, would cook food, and we'd have these, jazz parties. So it was a different environment, I think, than what your average a person studying jazz grows up with. So I never took lessons, like not lessons. I took a lot of lessons, but I never took music in school, high school or anything like that, because Clark Terry was at the house, So I learned that way, and so there was mentorship happening all throughout my childhood. I cite Jack DeJohnette as my biggest mentor on the drums because I started going to his house, and his style of playing resonated with me the most, I would say, even though, I really try to steal from everybody, still to this day. Roy Haynes is another one whose style really resonated with me. And of course, all the greats, really, all the masterful drummers, the people that were the innovators. But Jack's two biggest influences were Roy Haynes and Elvin Jones, which you can hear in his playing. So the fact that Jack became my biggest mentor, and that Roy Haynes was one of his mentors, so to say, made total sense. And then that was, I think, when I was 18. And then when I was 21, I got the gig with Wayne Shorter, and then he became, my second, mentor of that stature, and it was, musical, of course, but with Wayne, whatever's musical is just a big part of the ocean of life. Matter of fact, that's what he told me. Music is just a drop in the ocean of life. So that really, helped put things in perspective. Because, at 21, you play a gig, you think you're awful, you trip on it, you know what I mean? It's like, God, what am I doing here? How did I get here? And God, I sounded terrible. That was, the feeling often. But then, he would say things like that, music's just a drop in the ocean of life. And that would put things in perspective. Another one that people like to now quote because it's in the documentary about Wayne that I said, which is another thing that he said, which is, what's one night in the eyes of eternity? So when you look at it like that, yeah.
Right, humbling.
Yeah. So yeah, Wayne, it's, spiritual mentor as well. I started practicing Buddhism from working with Wayne. But those are, two obvious mentors, but then there's all the mentoring that happens just on the regular with people that you admire and people that take the time to explain things to you, show things to you. It doesn't always have to be somebody of another generation. It can be peer mentoring. It's very important because none of us got here alone. And I don't know how you survive without a certain amount of mentoring, which is why I created, along with Vanessa Reed at New Music USA, Next Jazz Legacy Apprenticeship and Mentoring Program, because often women aren't getting the same kind of mentoring or apprenticeship. Mentoring is one thing. I know, Vijay, we actually talked about that at some point, too, because there's a lot of mentoring happening, but then that on-stage experience, which is, to me, more of apprenticeship, that's not happening as much for women. So that's why this program was important because I thought, well, how do I get more great musicians to give some of these young women a shot? And I thought, well, let's pay them. So they get a grant, and to help rehearse a new musician, and at least put them on 6 gigs within a year's time. So it's been working out well. We're going into our 3rd year.
Beautiful, beautiful. Speaking about this sort of lack of women, were there any women when you were coming up that you felt as though were your educators, or teachers, or mentors?
No, there were not really. I can't think of any. I mean, that would be awful if there were, and I'm forgetting. Mm-hmm. But that's part of it too. We do that. I just a sidebar. I did that for years until recently, when I would tell a certain story about getting a scholarship to Berklee when I was 11, and I would say I sat in with Oscar Peterson, the president, and his wife heard me and gave me a scholarship. that was kind of the end of the story. And then not too long ago, my dad reminded me that it was Ella Fitzgerald that took me by the hand to meet Oscar Peterson. And I had just put her out of the story. You know, so I was like, if I can do that to Ella Fitzgerald, like what is happening in the world? Like who else is doing that on a much different level, like we're just, erasure is real.
Right.
So in answer to your question, there were a lot of women, I think, when you say that, I think specifically in jazz, like as a drummer or a musician that took me by there wasn't a lot of that, but there were definitely women that mentored and inspired in other ways. I had a long friendship since I was 10 years old with Diane Reeves. And she's only 9 years older than me, but at the time you're 10 and she's 19, it's definitely, big sister vibes, So that's a form of mentorship. There was Sweet Honey in the Rock, Bernice Johnson Regan, who's, everybody knows, who's, an amazing songwriter, vocalist, activist. And that was definitely mentorship because I think that's when I started seeing the role of artivist, the role of artists being concerned about what was going on in the society around them. It was more obvious and clear to me then, even though I didn't necessarily focus on that. Angela Davis, I met her when I was 23. And even though we're just friends, there's definitely some mentorship there as well because she's another, of course, amazing activist and artistic with words. It's all connected in some way.
Well, obviously we know this particular music and its histories are burdened by the male gaze. In 2013, you became the first woman to win a Grammy for Best Instrumental Jazz Album. Your own teaching at Berklee comes through the portal of the Berklee Institute of Jazz and Gender Justice, as Vijay mentioned earlier. Can you tell us a little bit about your vision for the program and like what? Yeah, just talk about the vision of the program and also why it's important to you and what you want students and musicians to take away from their time in that program. And perhaps, I'm asking multiple questions, sorry. But perhaps also speak about, how does your experience as a Black woman in this music inform how and what you teach at this institute?
Okay. Well, the first thing I'll say is it doesn't really have anything to do with your questions is when you mentioned that Grammy, people always talk about that I was the first woman to win that particular award, which was jazz instrumental, that category. But I was not only the first woman to win, I was the first woman to be nominated with a solo project. The only two nominations before that were not for solo projects. Mary Lou Williams was on a group album with Dizzy Gillespie. So when that album got nominated, technically she was nominated. And then when Joe Lovano's Us Five got nominated, Esperanza was in that band. So technically she was nominated then, but I was the first, that had a solo album. And then Tia Fuller was the second, which is the album I produced. And then last year, Linda Mahon O and Chris Davis were the third and the fourth, and the second and the third to win, actually. So now there's 3 women with Grammys, 3 in instrumental jazz category. And this year, Lakeisha Benjamin is nominated, so that makes her the 5th, I believe, woman to be nominated in that category. And Esperanza is nominated in that category. And actually, last year, Esperanza was nominated as well for the Wayne Shorter album that we did together. So so she was actually the third in that, and made, altogether, Linda, Chris, and Esperanza the same year. So that was 4, and yeah. So 6. I'm trying to do the math. I can't right now. But yeah, I think that it's a really interesting example of how women have something like that. The Academy women have been I don't know, ignored, looked over. But with this new category that Vijay mentioned, I think that'll also open up for more women instrumentalists and vocalists. As far as the Institute, now I have to go back to those other questions.
No, just talk about your vision for that program and the experience that you hope students come away with once they go through that program.
Those are big, overarching questions,
Yeah.
and I think the basic original vision is to create a space. There's in a name, like there's a lot that can happen. You have a name. There's a lot that can happen under that banner, and it's up to you to make some stuff happen. It's just creating it is the first step. And I wanted a space where women, non-binary musicians could come and not necessarily feel as much of the weight and extra burdens that they may have felt elsewhere. And I didn't, basically just talking to students made me see that weight was unbearable. People quitting school and teachers talking crazy to students, telling them to do their hair, telling women to do their hair. And, so I just, rather than wanting to run up on somebody, I thought, let's create a space where this kind of nonsense won't happen. And then you just go from there. So we just had 2 ensembles to start, and it's just grown, and now we have, I don't even know how many, I don't know, 10, something like that, 10 or 11 ensembles. I don't pay attention to all of those kinds of details. There's enough going on in my brain. So admin work is not my forte. Shout out to Asia, is she here? Yeah. Asia Burrell Wood, who 12 ensembles, thank you. She was the managing director of the Institute and, keeps it all together. But, so yeah, creating the space. And then the idea was I'm good with, as I said, overarching ideas. So the idea was to set new standards, which became the name of the book, but to set new standards in order to shift the narrative that we have been seeing for so many years, that men play jazz and women sing it, and doing all that to really help to transform the culture. And that's the ultimate goal, which is you can do in your silo of a school or institution, which is important because people are there. But for me, I'm always looking at a bigger picture. So I would say 50% of our work is outside of the college and 50% at the college. And for me, it's always about transforming the culture, one person at a time maybe, or one group at a time, one student body at a time, whatever it is. And then ultimately, so that we can imagine jazz without patriarchy. And those are like, the catchphrases.
Sure.
Set new standards, shift the narrative, transform the culture to have jazz without patriarchy.
Yeah, amazing. I'm going to ask one last question. We've been talking about your experience as an educator in terms of what you provide to the students, why you do what you do. Can you perhaps just share a bit of what you've learned or gained from your students? What have they taught you?
Sure. And first I want to go back, though, just to the last question. I was going to go back to the last question. There was something you said. I guess if it's important, it will come back. But to answer your question, it's always an exchange. It's so important. I mean, I would be bored to tears if I wasn't learning, if it wasn't an exchange. I wouldn't be able to do it, actually. I have to be getting something out of it, too, you know? It's not a one-way relationship.
Sure.
Which is kind of sad in a sense, because sometimes I think, you know, the students that don't understand that don't know how to actually engage with a teacher, they probably get the worst version of me, because I need to be inspired. You know what I mean? Somebody's curiosity can inspire, and their knowledge about things. You know, I don't know much of anything. You know, we all know what we know, but there's so much we don't know. So the first thing, you know, if I had a private drum lesson, the first thing I might is, you know, ask them to play, and then I see something that they do that's interesting, and then I ask them to show that to me. So their first lesson, they're teaching me something, you know. I mean, that's, you know, and it establishes a nice rapport and mutual respect. Oh, I know. I'm sorry. This is how I do my lessons too. Going back to the previous question, because you had asked about something about being a black woman.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just want to address that even in our mission statement, we say that we're guided by the principles of both gender justice and racial justice, because they're, you know, linked. And I just wanted to make that point.
Sure.
Because, you know, we've been talking a lot about gender, but we're also talking about jazz. You know, so we can't not acknowledge race too. So that's why our institute acknowledges both. Back to what I get from the students. Yeah, everything.
Everything. Amazing.
Everything. But, you know, one thing that I think I didn't necessarily expect is because we work hard to try to keep an environment that feels somewhat balanced, you know, like hopefully close to 50-50, somewhere in there. It really depends on the year. But the last thing I really wanted to do was have the situation that so many young women that come through the Institute have said, I've never been in an ensemble with other women before, which really kind of blows my mind. You know, it's like it shouldn't be that way, right? So I don't want to then replicate that. You know, then they come to the Institute and they're the only woman in an ensemble. So we really try to do that. Well, another thing I was going to say is that what did surprise me is that so many men have applied to be in the Institute, and we realized that so many young men have grown tired of the kind of toxic masculinity or hyper-masculinity that they have found in jazz culture. And so that's a very interesting thing that I didn't personally think about before, you know, so starting the Institute. But I did always think about how young men need to do this work, because often people would see it as women's work. You know, you get tired of doing that fight, and other people just kind of like not think about it, because it's kind of like not my problem. So that's, you know, been something that we definitely don't want to see with, you know, the people that come through the Institute, and when we don't see that, you know, but it's a lot of work to try to shift things that have been in place a certain way for so long, and it's something that everybody has to do, or it will never actually change.
Well, thank you for your wisdom, your leadership, your selfless commitment. We're so grateful. And just for sharing these words. We're going to actually open it up for questions from some students who have prepared a couple of questions for you.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. We're supposed to introduce ourselves. So I'm Dylan. I'm a junior at the college pursuing a joint concentration in government and art, film, and visual studies with a secondary in music. Thank you for being here. We're so excited to see you, and obviously good to see you again. My question, it's kind of been touched on, but I'm going to qualify it a little more. So as a prominent advocate for gender equality in the jazz world, you've made significant contributions to empowering women in music. How do you envision the continued progression of inclusivity in the industry, and what steps do you believe are crucial in fostering a more diverse and equitable musical community? And if you could touch more on the role of music itself and like drums and instrumentals, that would be great. And thank you.
Yeah, I'm old now these days, and I'm going to have to go, that question is going to have to come part by part. And you were talking a little fast. So the first part is, how do you envision more inclusivity? What did you say?
I can repeat it. How do you envision the continued progression of inclusivity in the industry?
Okay, continued progression of inclusivity in the industry. How do you envision? Well, honestly, I don't spend a lot of time envisioning things like that. I think we just do what we do, and we align ourselves with, people that are also doing work, and you start to see and notice change. I don't have the answers. So a question like that kind of makes me feel a little like, yeah, what would you tell somebody, like how to do that? How do we get to that place? And I wish I had those answers, but I don't really. I think it's just, for me, inside of jazz, and when you're trying to shift, the consciousness or transform the culture, you have to, do it on different levels, right? You have to do it with musicians, the practitioners. You have to do it with students. You have to do it with teachers. They're all kind of these different tiers. You have to do it with industry people. I mean, really with industry people as well. Most musicians, I think the musician is probably the easiest to talk to about these kinds of things, because I believe that most musicians want to be on the right side of history. I think they want to be progressive. So if you point something out to somebody and they feel like, I'm not, that means I'm not hip, they're gonna think about it. They don't want to be on the wrong side. So, people ask me all the time, sort of sidebarring here, but like if I get backlash, and I'm not to my face, never, not once, because I believe that people actually want to see something different. The ones that don't, not that I'm into cancel culture or anything, but I cancel personally on the people on the people that don't. They're not trying to, and who to waste your time and energy with, who not to waste your time and energy with. And if somebody's just really kind of older and set in their ways, then I don't spend a lot of time there. I'm cordial. But there are also a lot of older musicians that pick up the phone and say, wow, I didn't think about it like this. Wow, let's talk about this, or I have to think about things differently. And they seem excited, to do that. So that's always a big victory. So as far as more inclusivity, everybody just has to open up their minds, ears, hearts, and things will eventually evolve. No, you had about 3 more questions?
No, it's okay. That was a great answer. I'll pass it to Toussaint. Thank you.
Okay.
Congratulations on this award, just again.
Thank you.
My name is Toussaint Miller. I am a junior here studying neuroscience, also with a secondary in music. And as Somi mentioned earlier in the program, when we reflect upon your career thus far, we consider your role as a musician, a drummer, a composer first. But like so many other Black creatives who push the boundaries of their artistry, you have shown a vested interest in discovering and uplifting multidisciplinary forms of artistic expression. most notably your collaborations with Micheline Thomas and Carrie Mae Weems. And so I was hoping that you could talk a little bit more about why being a part of and highlighting such fusion and melding of different media is so important.
Yeah. I think, so much, like, jazz is so specific, and there's such a thing, with it in the community, and we can just get into that and just be in that for the rest of our lives, and just, keep diving deeper into it, and it could work that way, but I just never wanted to be just that, I think I gave up. I used to say I gave up when I was 18 when I got to Berklee. Well, I got there when I was 17, but I gave up on wanting to be like this great drummer because, before that, I wanted to be like Buddy Rich was also a mentor, And now I look at those videos, I was like, I was crazy to think that I was going to go up against Buddy. This guy was a freak of nature. And I was not, not that way, not with like that kind of technical prowess. And I didn't want to work that hard at, an instrument, with this one discipline of playing this instrument. So immediately I was interested in all these other things, like writing or producing, everything that had to do with music outside of just playing the drums. Singing, I'm a closeted singer. I do sing on some of my records. But it's something I love to do, but I'm not going to win any Grammys singing. But I just feel like there was this whole totality of, and also genre. I'm not a jazz purist by any far stretch of the imagination, and I like all these other styles. So I think all of that points to why eventually I would want to start messing around with visual artists and dancers and, just other people doing other things in the art field. Because I looked, when I read about Harlem, I wished that I had been there. Harlem, during the Harlem Renaissance, but even a bit after that, I really wished I had been there. And I really enjoyed, reading about, gatherings and these different people getting together, whether it was James Baldwin and Zora Neale Hurston and lots of writers and musicians, Duke Ellington and, so many different people, Romare Bearden and, people of different ages, and wondering what a 20-year-old Romare Bearden was saying to, Duke Ellington or somebody else, thinking about what I was, how I was at 20, also around like Dizzy Gillespie or whomever, in the conversations and, we would have. And of course, that's more isolated because you might be on the road, if I was on the road with Clark Terry, or, and you'd have these great conversations and you would learn a lot. Like, I feel like I'm from the school of Ellingtonia because I played with Clark Terry. You know what I mean? And so even when I teach, I want, the people, the students that I'm with feel like they're from the school of Wayne Shorter because, I talk a lot about what Wayne taught me. And continues to teach me. We don't talk about him, most of us, like he's even gone. He's still with us in so many ways. But, so, yeah, I think I do have this vision of wishing there would be some, the problem is now everybody's so spread apart and, life has changed, it's so much busier. I think it's harder to have these kinds of communities. But hey, I went to New York to see Somi's play, and
selfless commitment.
Yeah, and I try to talk to writers, scholars, writers all the time. Just people that I make relationships with, because like we were talking earlier about Daphne Brooks, and she's unveiling things that affect me, that help me with my own identity. in her books. And why wouldn't I want to have conversations with her? So we have our conversations that can be artistic, that can be collaborative. And I think that that's, the future and the present, collaboration. It's always been there, but of course, I think as the world, we're trying to figure out more ways for this music to continually thrive. And I think collaboration and multidisciplinary projects are a part of that.
Thank you so much, Somi and Terri. Oh, I'm so sorry, Somi. Were you about to say something?
No.
Thank you all so much. We are from the Jazz and Gender Justice Institute. We're all former students of Terri's, and we are going to play a few tunes. So feel free to actually enjoy and sit and relax and enjoy the music.
All right, yay.
Thanks so much. That was one of Terri's pieces, Now and Before. And we actually, I think you gave us that sheet music and ensemble, and we were like, what should we play? And we're like, maybe we should pull this one out. Thought it would surprise you, so. And it's an amazing tune. So for our second and final tune, we're gonna play a piece from the New Standards book, which we've talked about a little bit, but it's such an incredible project, a book, an album, a philosophy, and we're just so grateful to get to perform this music and to know you. So just to quickly introduce the band, this is Fall Ray, this is, yes, on saxophone, on tenor, Chris Lee on bass, Jillian Upshaw on drums, and Roella Aloro on piano. And my name is Veronica, and we're so excited to be here, and congratulations, Terri.
I want to introduce you to the chair of the music department. Would you please welcome Carolyn Abbate?
So we're going to say something about Luise Vosgerchian, for whom the award is named. But actually, I'm inspired to start with something in the chair's office in music. There's this wall of black and white photos going back to the 1920s, and they're photos of the people who've chaired the music department, and they're in 3 rows. And these men are pretty grim in the photos. I mean, they're really locked down. And right there on the 3rd row is the black and white photo of Luise Vosgerchian. And she's seated at a piano, and her hand is going up like this. So she's actually the only animated figure in this wall. And it suddenly occurred to me, and this refers to something that Terri Lyne Carrington said, is that this is a space where this nonsense is not happening. That's what she's saying about that office. But Vosgerchian was a path breaker in a number of ways. She had a first career as a concert pianist, and she appeared as a soloist with the New York Philharmonic, the Boston Symphony. And she became a member of the Harvard Music Department in 1959. She retired in 1990. And in the early 70s, Harvard promoted her from being a lecturer, which was the usual rank for a virtuoso performer, to being a full professor. So she was the very first performer in the department who was named to this rank. And that was the beginning of a real transformation in the music department that happened slowly, but it's still happening now. And in the Harvard archives, there are testimonials from students of hers, and they talk about how she believes every student is unique and has this special perspective, and particularly that she was famous for saying, you have to trust your ear, you have to trust your intuition, and you also have to trust your intellect, and all these three things go together. Dozens of her students went on to have careers as performers and composers, and to quote one of them, Yo-Yo Ma, she was the most important influence in my life. So the Teaching Award was established in 1986, and as Vijay showed in his slide, it's to perpetuate the values that were embodied by this extraordinary woman. And it's given in recognition of, and we've seen these rubrics already, but I want to end with the one that comes last. It's a sincere interest in the development of the whole person. And Jack will now say something more personal about Luise Vosgerchian.
Thanks, Carolyn. We're tag teaming this, Terri Lyne. When I moved up from New York City in the 1980s, it was to become associate director of the Lange School of Music. And a newly appointed board member was Luise Vosgerchian. And I was young, and she was near the end of her life. And we ended up planning a week-long festival dedicated to Nadia Boulanger. And I ended up having many lunches and coffees with her, and I used to write down what she said, and I thought it might be nice just to share some of these with you, some of these quotes, which I haven't looked at in about almost 40 years, but I thought some of them were applicable to you. One of the things, we were discussing what it's like to be the chair of the Harvard Music Department, the first woman who chaired it and so on, and she said, "Oh, listen, dear, the main thing is love what you do, and for God's sakes, don't be afraid." And I thought that applied to you. I found this great story of you at 10 years of age at the Wichita Jazz Festival, getting ready to meet Buddy Rich, and no one wanted to introduce you to Buddy Rich. Buddy was known as being sometimes ornery, and I'm quoting you here. You really wanted to meet him, and people said, "Terri Lyne, he's in a bad mood," but I just kind of wandered over anyway. And somebody said, "Oh, Buddy, this is Terri Lyne. She's a guest drummer with Clark Terry's band." He looked down at me and said, "Oh yeah, well, you better not be any good." And I looked up at him and said, "Well, who's going to stop me?" And he paused and he changed and he said, "Hey kid, you want to play with my band tonight?" So I thought that was very much in Luise's spirit. Second thing she said about chairing the department was, I don't want to be an example for anyone, period. But if I have to be, then I'm going to be a damn good one. And I think you have been an example in so many ways that we've heard tonight. Everything from your music just to the way in which you've inspired other people, the questions, your answers to Somi's beautiful questions. I think Luise would be smiling somewhere. I'd like to imagine she is. And one more quote from her on the subject of mentors. And I thought I wasn't going to read this quote, but you referenced your dad and the fact, the role he played for you in your life early on. And I'd read a quote from you in which you talked about his influence and how it really speaks to what can happen when someone nurtures your potential. And this has been what you've dedicated your life to with so many students. And she said about this, when I asked her about mentors, she said, you remember them. You wish desperately that they were here to thank. And you hope that you're thanking them by passing it on. And I was thinking about Vijay's quotes tonight from Veronica Leahy and Devin Gates, and I think it's pretty clear you've passed it on in a way that has changed people's lives. And so you are the really quintessentially perfect Luise Vosgerchian honoree. And before Carolyn reads the citation, which we haven't rehearsed, I have to figure out where I'm going to stand, Carolyn. We're going to make this happen, though. I just thought I'd like to tell you some of the other recipients, and this would be nice for everyone else to hear as well. I'll just name some of the most recent ones. Sweet Honey in the Rock won this award about 6 or 7 years ago. Conductor Maren Alsop, one of the first women to conduct a major U.S. orchestra, won it. The pianist Andre Watts won it, and at his ceremony even played under Federico Cortese with the Harvard Radcliffe Orchestra. The choral director-composer Persephone Powell won it 2 years ago, and last year it was Tanya Leone. So we're so proud to add your name to that roster. They say that we honor ourselves when we give an award to someone like you, but the fact of the matter is just to have any association with someone like you and people like this is a great signifier to our students about what they might aspire to be. So congratulations and thank you, and we will read you the citation now.
It looks like a medieval parchment. And okay. The Office for the Arts at Harvard and Harvard University Department of Music present the 2023 Luise Vosgerchian Teaching Award to Terri Lyne Carrington for her momentous artistic achievement, rigorous dedication to music education, devotion to countless young musicians, and leadership in the vital conversations about jazz, gender, and justice. Harvard honors Terri Lyne Carrington with this award given in the name of Luise Vosgerchian, a beloved teacher, former Walter W. Naumburg Professor of Music, Emerita, in the Harvard Department of Music.
Wow, this has been an amazing evening, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody. Actually, it's been an amazing day. Started off with Vijay and Yasvani in their class and having a great conversation with them and their students about, about composition, but about everything, about music, about life. And then just to, be here and listening to these great young musicians. That was such a treat. I didn't know they were going to play the song that we were listening to today in the class. So that was a nice surprise. Yeah, I've been really proud of all of you. So just to hear you, how it came together tonight, really beautiful. And to invite my sister Somi to have a conversation was icing on the cake, so to say. Thanks for making the journey here, the trek here from, you were in the Midwest, in Illinois, where were you? Houston. You said Houston? Yeah, okay. So thank you for getting off the plane and coming here. Thank you to Alicia and everybody here, Jack, and everybody here that helped to make this happen. And to the Max Goldberg Foundation for establishing, this honor. Thanks to my mother and my cousin for coming, and Asia, and some of our students. And, I think it's really thoughtful to have an award that honors educators. I think we know that, especially in, I guess it was elementary school and high school and all that teachers are sometimes undervalued. And I think that sometimes goes also into the college arena, too. And it can sometimes be a tiresome job and sometimes even thankless. Sometimes you leave scratching your head and wondering if you made a difference at all and if they understood anything you were saying, and not understood, but they understood, but if they, if it resonated, often I'll leave. I think that's probably one reason I stopped teaching private lessons. I was like, oh, I can't be so excited about this, and then they're looking at me like, so sometimes, it feels like, wow, okay, this is, but we keep at it. I won't say it can feel it can feel underappreciated sometimes by the students, sometimes by their parents. Like I've poured my life into like some students for 4 years, and, you meet their parents, at the graduation, and it's like they have no idea. So that can happen too. But it's also nice when, that the parents do really appreciate what you do with their kids. Speaking as a mother, I understand that. But my point is we don't do it for that reason, right? We don't do it for thanks, for recognition. It's nice when it happens, but we don't do it for that reason. I would say we're motivated by something much greater. And I sort of touched on it, talking about kind of the energetic satisfaction that you get on one-on-one, but it's really when you see the light bulbs going off and you're passionate about something, and then you meet somebody young that's just discovering the things that you're passionate about. And there's really, no better feeling than to be able to help, maybe inspire or push them along on this journey that you, especially with this art form of jazz, because nobody plays jazz unless they love it. This is definitely a love affair that you have to have with this art form. You're not doing it for money, definitely not money. And and you're not doing it for fame unless you're, as we say, jazz famous. But no, it's definitely for the love of the art form. So to be part of the foundation of these next generations that will hopefully continue this art form that we love so much is very, very important and very rewarding. I know that Yo-Yo Ma was just quoted, but I'm going to quote him again. I did some research as well on Luise, and do definitely wish I had met her. But Yo-Yo Ma said she helps us to get at the core of a piece of music and find the mechanism to make something come to life. And that he's the musician that he is today because of the time he spent with her. That says a whole lot coming from Yo-Yo Ma. Jon Stewart said, Luise had the uncanny ability to communicate the most profound issues of music through a non-technical language to anyone. She was able to convey the essence of human communication, all the metaphors of human experience that was contained in the music. And I thought that was really beautiful because great music teachers understand that music is not about the notes, and they're able to convey its essence. It's about the vibration, the energy, the storytelling that connects our humanity. It's a healing force, can make us happy, can make us sad. And Dr. Angela Davis has been quoted already this evening. I'll have to get you and her for that, for that surprise. But she says it allows us to feel that which we cannot yet put into words. And so all of these mysterious things about music that that you can't really talk about or analyze. And so I think John Stewart was saying that Luise was able to do that, to teach in that way, which I find very interesting. And I've also thought about over the years how important it is for women to learn from women. Because, of course, as they say, you can't be what you can't see. So it's going to be important for you to have, we've talked about role models and mentors. But it's also very important for women to teach men. And one would hope that this could help curtail, I guess, gender discrimination in our field. I always say that if a woman has kicked your butt in the ensemble room, in the practice room, whether it's one-on-one on a lesson or in a group setting, it's going to be a lot harder for you to kind of fall prey to the sexism and misogyny that exist. I think, that's what I think, but I don't know exactly. I'm not sure if it's entirely true. Men have been taught by women over the years, especially more so I think in classical music than in jazz. And men have definitely claimed women to be their muses for centuries. And of course, men have daughters, but that doesn't always add up to, it doesn't translate, the way that we might hope always. So those things I do feel are shifting in the right direction in this regard. It's still a lot of work to be done. So I'm grateful for Luise and every other amazing woman teacher that has set an example and really paints the world that they want to live in, which I hope is a world we all want to live in, which is a world of equity and fairness. So, yeah, I could have thought, what do I have in common with a classical pianist? But there's obviously a lot in common, as we've come to see. If nothing else, it's given me a beautiful opportunity to learn more about her. And so all those things that we've been talking about, the criteria for this award, the three that stood out to me the most: selfless commitment, because I think if you're not really kind of 100% committed and also 100% present when you're teaching, you can't mail it in. And if you're not present and committed, the students know and they feel it, and I think you've lost them. So I think that selfless commitment is super important as it relates to teaching. A constant renewal of approach to the subject matter, because you have to, you want to inspire them, but you also have to keep inspiring yourself. So in this ever-changing world, our views and methods should continuously evolve. And this is so that we remain relevant to the very people that we're trying to teach. And a sincere interest in the development of the whole person, that is super, super important and resonates a lot with me, because sometimes if you're, imagine you're in, my first 10 years of teaching at Berklee, I was in a small room with 2 drum sets with students for, I don't know, sometimes 8 hours a day. And it gets challenging. It gets challenging. You're doing sometimes the same lesson plans or something similar, and sometimes, the aptitude is the levels are quite varied with the aptitude. So I started having to care about the whole person early on to keep, myself even in this field. It had to be about the whole person and not just their drumming abilities. And one anecdote is I have this student that he was an okay drummer, but we vibed. He was a good person, and we vibed, and I enjoyed the lessons. But the next time I saw him after he left Berklee, he was selling green tea, and he got really into this. He went to Japan. He went to the farm. He picked the leaves himself. He was way into this. And when I tasted it, it was the best green tea I ever tasted in my life. And I felt like that was just as important, as later seeing a drummer that sounded good, that was playing with some jazz star. I felt like the things that he learned and the values that we talked about, I think also influenced him as being a green tea farmer. And, Wayne Shorter said, I am not what I do what I am. So that's it right there. That's the whole person. I'm not what I do what I am. And the final thing I'll say that I really found, I guess the word would be cute, but there's more to it than cute, but about Luise is that she seized an opportunity to change the spelling of her name. Once it was spelled incorrectly at her very first recital. They left out the O. So Luise was how they spelt it. And then she took that on as her name, and I thought that was really interesting because I think it takes a person that truly is taking in everything around them, their environment, and a person that can change poison into medicine and takes their cues from the universe. So I think she was my kind of girl, and wish I had gotten to meet her. So thank you very much for bestowing this incredible award in this incredible woman's name, and I'm just grateful. Thank you.
So everybody, that wraps up the evening, but this great band is going to play you out. So please socialize, greet Terri Lyne, and let's welcome back the band and thank them for their incredible music. It's been a joy to hear them tonight.
And for anyone who doesn't know that song, that's Unconditional Love, Jerry Allen. And the night wouldn't be complete without Jerry Allen. So congratulations, Terri.